Welcome to the Alberta Legislature for Monday, December the 10th, 1990. I'm David Carter, Speaker of the Assembly and member for Calgary-Egmont. This afternoon, after question period, the House will be resolving into second reading stage of Bill 38, Loan and Trust Corporations Act. This evening, when the House reconvenes at 8 o'clock, the Committee of the Whole will continue to deal with Bill 57, the Electoral Boundaries Commission Act. The House will probably continue to at least 10 or 10:30 this evening. Let us pray. As Canadians and as Albertans, we give thanks for the precious gifts of freedom and peace which we enjoy. As members of this Legislative Assembly, we rededicate ourselves to the valued traditions of parliamentary democracy as a means of serving our province and our country. Amen.
Introduction of visitors, presenting petitions, reading and receiving petitions.
Member for Westlock Sturgeon.
May I ask the petition I submitted last week on the building going ahead with the Immaculata Hospital be read?
We, the undersigned, residents of the town and district of Westlock, hereby request the Legislative Assembly to urge the Government of Alberta to move ahead with the construction of the new Immaculata Hospital as swiftly as possible, as the land for the project has already been purchased by the sisters on the strength of government's approval to build the hospital. Presenting reports by standing and special committees. Notices of motions.
The member for the leader of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've given notice to the Speaker's office with respect to a Standing Order 40, a motion to be debated after, or to a motion that I wish to seek unanimous consent from the House to debate is as follows. Be it resolved that the Legislative Assembly acknowledge December 10, 1990 as being Universal Human Rights Day, thus recognizing the basic rights all humans must have to freedom and to equality, and also that time be set aside on December the 10th for the reading and affirmation of the Declaration in the Legislature. And by that I mean, Mr. Speaker, referring to the successes and failures if there are any. Thank you.
Member for Edmonton Avonmore.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to give oral notice of motion under Standing Order 40 that the Assembly do consider the following a motion. Be it resolved that the Legislative Assembly of Alberta today commemorate the 42nd anniversary of the signing of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, and that each member of the Assembly today make a personal commitment to promote human rights, tolerance, and equality in all areas of endeavor in her or his personal and public life.
Introduction of bills.
Member for Edmonton Jasper Place.
Mr. Speaker, I request leave to introduce an act to amend the Amusements Act. The purpose of this act is to restrict access to pornographic films and videotapes to kids under the age of 18. It would make it an offense to rent films to people under 18 and to exhibit them in a facility such as a peep show.
The honourable member for Edmonton Jasper Place has moved first reading of Bill 285, an act to amend the Amusements Act. Those members in favor of first reading, please say aye. Opposed, please say no. Carried.
Bill number 285, an act to amend the Amusements Act, introduced by the honourable member Mr. McInnes, is now read a first time. Tabling returns and reports.
Member for Edmonton Gold Bar, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to table a letter from Carrie Brinkert, the president of the University of Calgary Students' Union. This letter is deploring the government's response in not allowing consideration of my motion regarding World AIDS Day.
Minister of Advanced Education.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to table the annual report for 1987-88 of Athabasca University.
27 more to go.
Member for Edmonton Meadowlark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have three separate documents which I would like to table. If you would bear with me, I'd like to make a short statement about each one separately. The first one is a paper prepared by Louisiana Pacific Canada Limited, in which it argues that the new zero effluent pulp mill that it is building at Chetwynd, BC, will create a pulp which, one, can replace bleachcraft hardwood presently being used on most paper machines, two, delivers at a high enough brightness to be interchangeable with chlorine compound bleachcraft pulps, and three, has superior brightness stability over chlorine compound bleachcraft pulps. The second document that I would like to table is a very visually appealing pamphlet that has been printed on chlorine-free paper made of clay-coated wood-containing pulp obtained from a Swedish manufacturer. And thirdly, Mr. Speaker, I would like to present a technical paper which describes the zero effluent pulp making process that is currently being planned for a plant in Stewart, BC. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Additional.
Introduction of special guests.
Member for Lesser Slave Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's with a great deal of pleasure that I stand to introduce to you and to the members of the Assembly 63 of 134 students in grade 8 from the Roland Michener Junior High School. They are seated in the, and they're accompanied actually by their teacher, Terry Mosher, and their parents, Dolly Twin, Jeff Foran, Connie Gullion, Dave Warren, and they're seated in the members' gallery. I ask that they rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly.
Member for Wainwright.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is my pleasure to introduce to you and through you to the members of the Assembly a group from the Provost High School. They are here today to attend the awards presentation at the Human Rights Day ceremony at Grant MacEwan College this evening. They are representing all of the students of the Provost High School who have taken an active stand against hatred and racism in Alberta. Seated in the public gallery are students Jody Boddy, Teresa Elliott, Colin Severson, and they are accompanied by their principal, Wally Hurl, and his wife, Lynn. I ask them to stand and receive the warm welcome of this Assembly.
Edmonton Gold Bar.
Mr. Speaker, I'm privileged today to introduce to you and to the members of the Assembly 46 students from the Holyrood School in Gold Bar. Mr. Speaker, they're accompanied by their teachers, Adele Wagera, who is in charge of grade 6 English, and Colleen Moore-Kilgannon, who is in charge of grade 6 French, and by Michael Pilasar, who is a former student of Adele Wagera's and is visiting us from Vienna. They're in the public gallery. Mr. Speaker, I'd ask that they stand and receive the warm welcome of this assembly.
Ministerial statements.
Minister of Labour.
Mr. Speaker, on December 10th, 1948, the United Nations proclaimed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, stating that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Since then, people throughout the world, including Alberta, have made December 10th a day of celebration and reaffirmation of human rights principles. Mr. Speaker, the vast majority of Albertans have always upheld the values embodied in the UN Declaration and within our own Individual Rights Protection Act. Our pioneers came here seeking fairness and freedom and the right to worship and to pursue a better standard of life without penalty for being different. Albertans fought and died in the Second World War so that women and men everywhere might live in liberty and justice. And in the past year, we have witnessed many individual examples of human rights in action. We saw students and other individuals in Provost march to protest the Aryan nations. We saw the B'nai B'rith produce a unity pin. We saw women and men devote thousands of volunteer hours to agencies and organizations dedicated to helping immigrants, the disabled, women, seniors, and many others. And this week and next, we will see schools, municipalities, and organizations throughout the province hold special ceremonies to celebrate human rights. Mr. Speaker, we are a people and province committed to the principle that all Albertans should be on a level playing field with rules that are fair to everybody. We believe deeply that no Albertan should be shut out or kept down because of what they look like, how they worship, or where they come from. Those of us in government, whether as elected officials or hired employees, must work especially hard to uphold these fundamental principles because we set the standard and an example for the entire province. Mr. Speaker, given our commitment to the principles of fairness and freedom for all, given the countless individual examples of commitment to these principles, given that it is always valuable to reaffirm our collective commitment to these principles, and given that December 10th is the anniversary of the signing of the UN Declaration on Human Rights, I hereby proclaim December 10th, 1990 as Human Rights Day in Alberta, and I wish to table with the Assembly copies of the proclamation.
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, 42 years ago, the United Nations proclaimed a Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say that in 1990, that this is still a very relevant document, especially relevant for the 1990s. Mr. Speaker, since that time in 1948, obviously some progress has been made. But I have to say, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, and I think we all agree with this, that we have a lot of grounds to cover yet, Mr. Speaker. We have a lot of work to do here in Alberta, in Canada, and certainly in the world. Now, while the Declaration has more to do with an attitude rather than specifically a legal document, we know there are things that can be done, Mr. Speaker. And in the spirit of the ministerial announcement, I would suggest that the minister take a look at lack of funds for the Human Rights Commission. They say that they've doubled their caseloads in the last 3 years. They're running almost 40% higher in the first 7 months of 1990, and they've had to schedule canceled meetings for lack of funds. Mr. Speaker, I think that the minister has to look at some decent funding for the Human Rights Commission to go with the high-flowing rhetoric. Also, I think it's clear, Mr. Speaker, that we need the commission to be able not to just wait till they have complaints, but to be able to initiate their own investigations. Because many people that are intimidated do not feel that they can do anything about it because they do feel intimidated. I think it would be a very good step if the minister would proceed in this grounds, and I think it would be flowing very much flowing very much from the high-flowing rhetoric, if they put those two things together. So, Mr. Speaker, I would just conclude by saying that with the 42nd anniversary, let us all reaffirm our support to the Declaration of Rights and work to make Alberta and Canada a better place to live, and hopefully the world also a better place to live. Thank you.
Right on.
Oral question period.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in this Assembly, we've often seen how even the mere mention of the word privatization gets the people opposite shaking with excitement, Mr. Speaker. And we also know that this government has struck a committee to look into privatization, Mr. Speaker. And I guess I would say to the government, I wish they would be open and honest and lay out their privatization agenda instead of doing it behind closed doors with some secret studies, Mr. Speaker. And we have now one of those leaked studies and was prepared for the Department of Education, Mr. Speaker. It suggests that certain printing services of the Queen's Printer and the Alberta Correspondence School be privatized or contracted out, Mr. Speaker.
Typical.
And I'm quite prepared, if you so desire, Mr. Speaker, to file 4 copies. My question about another secret agenda here to the Minister of Education is this. Will the Minister confirm that his department is, in fact, intending to privatize or contract out at least some of these 2 services?
Mr. Speaker, it is the responsibility of this government, and in fact all ministers of the Crown, to ensure that taxpayers' dollars are spent wisely and carefully and most effectively. And Mr. Speaker, there's no hidden agenda here whatsoever. That is the intent of this government, and that is the intent of this minister.
Mr. Speaker, if this wasn't a hidden agenda, why don't we know about it? Why do we always have to get leaked reports to find out about it, Mr. Speaker? Now, Mr. Speaker, we find out after the fact, and we know that privatization has been very expensive so far, but in this report specifically states that the private sector will be prepared to participate if it's, and I quote, on a low-risk, cost-recovered basis. Now, Mr. Speaker, that's corporate jargon, means that the private sector expects the government to backstop its risk. That's what it's all about. Now, my question to the minister, given he talked about the taxpayers' dollars, given the taxpayer subsidization of the AGT privatization, will the minister tell us if he's prepared to privatize these services, even if it means that the taxpayers once again will have to guarantee the profits of private corporations?
Mr. Speaker, my original statement stands. This government is responsible for spending taxpayers' dollars wisely and effectively. And if the honourable member had done his homework, he would listen to my dear colleague on my left, the MLA for Barrhead, who advises that this very subject was discussed in the Barrhead newspaper about 12 months ago. But, Mr. Speaker, as the Honourable Treasurer has said, this matter, as well as any number of other matters, is under review, and you might hear something about it one of these days.
Mr. Speaker, that's the whole point. We should be dealing with this rather than hearing about after the fact and having to get reports from wherever, Mr. Speaker. Now, there's a lot in this particular report, Mr. Speaker. There's a lot. I'm doing your homework. We have to bring it to the legislature. I'm doing your homework. That's right. Mr. Speaker, my question to the minister also explores the possibility of transferring work currently done by the Central Duplicating Plant here in Edmonton to Barrhead, where the Correspondence School branch is. Now, again, want to ask him, rather than fluff and all the rhetoric, can he tell us very specifically if he has plans to take the work out of Edmonton and bring it to Barrhead, as the report suggests?
Mr. Speaker, the more that we can do throughout this entire province in the way of government services, be it printing or distribution or whatever, the more we can do throughout the province, the stronger those communities outside of Edmonton and Calgary will be. And that will be done at no expense to the taxpayers. It will be done at no expense to the people who enjoy a livelihood and good jobs in this city.
Second main question, Leader of the Opposition.
We never give money to corporations at any expense to the taxpayers. Never in this government, do they, Mr. Speaker? My second question, though, Mr. Speaker, is to the Minister of Advanced Education. Mr. Speaker, frankly, this government's waste and mismanagement is causing absolute havoc in the people's services. We've had discussions about what's happening with our hospital system, but I'd like to turn my attention to advanced education today, Mr. Speaker. And I have in front of me a letter that was sent by the President of the University of Alberta to the Planning and Priorities Committee of the Dean's Council, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to quote a couple sentences there. He says, through a 2% across-the-board budget cut, we removed $5 million from our operating expenditures. These cuts damaged the quality of teaching and research at our institution, in part because they allowed a decade of budget restraint. Real expenditures per student have fallen nearly 20% since 1979 to 80, Mr. Speaker. Now, he goes on to say that next year is probably going to be even more difficult, Mr. Speaker. He's talking about a doomsday scenario of massive cuts and perhaps shutting down departments and all sorts of other options. I know the minister is aware of this letter. My question to the minister is simply this. Rather than telling us how great we have it in Alberta, isn't it time that the minister brought in proper funding and restored it to our institutions so we can again have some decent advanced educational institutions in this province?
Here, here.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think the appropriate response would have to be we're now entering the budgetary process and we shall see what we shall see. However, I think it should be clearly understood if honourable members want to use the basis of comparison, Alberta versus other jurisdictions, I think in all fairness one would have to concede that although the funding may not be what everybody would like it to be, I do think that the funding in Alberta for our 28 institutions is probably as fair or more fair than other jurisdictions in Canada.
Mr. Speaker, it's going down fast, and that is totally irrelevant. What we're talking about is proper educational funding here in this province, Mr. Speaker, and that's a cop-out, the minister knows it. Is he saying then, by his answer, that everything's going along well, that the President, Mr. Davenport, is wrong when he says that we've had budget restraint since the real expenditures per student have fallen nearly 20% since 1979-80? Is he saying he's wrong about that?
Mr. Speaker, I don't wish to pick a quarrel with the President of the University of Alberta or any other institution. I would point out to honourable members, particularly those on the other side of the House, that there are many more institutions in this province than the University of Alberta, as fine an institution as that is, Mr. Speaker. As far as this minister is concerned, Medicinac College, Fairview College, and all the other 26 institutions in between, Mr. Speaker, are doing an excellent job. And I'm sure I would be the first to agree that funding on a per-student basis is lower than it was during the boom years. I think I would appreciate very much if honourable members in this House could suggest other ways that funding could be found, because in my view, Mr. Speaker, the ability of the taxpayer to pay more than the 90% they're now paying is simply not there.
Well,
I'll give you a whole list.
Mr. Speaker, I will take up the minister on that. How does he justify the fact that over $250 million through loans and loan guarantees has been squandered by that government? Wouldn't that be much better to be put into the advanced education instead of to the Pocklingtons of the world? That's where you get the money.
Right.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition is telling this minister that creating jobs in Alberta is not important. I have some difficulty with that. The very fact, Mr. Speaker, he reiterates exactly what the University of Alberta budget is, which is 25% of the total budget. I can only conclude my comment, Mr. Speaker, saying that students at our post-secondary institutions are my priority. I am the advocate for the post-secondary system. I continue to do whatever I can to see that the post-secondary system gets its fair share of the pie, and I'll continue to do what I'm able to do to achieve that.
Leader of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My questions are to the minister responsible for women's shelters. Mr. Speaker, violence in our society against women continues. Yesterday evening, a woman in Edmonton was sexually assaulted. The assaults against women do not decline, they increase. One of the special needs of women and families that are the targets of violence are women's shelters, safe houses that can provide safety to those families and provide support to those families. Unfortunately, last year in Alberta, about 4,000 families were turned away because there was no room in these shelters in Alberta. In Edmonton alone, from April until September, there was a threefold increase in the number of people turned away. And even though 8% was provided, no...
Order, honorable member. Order. You're up to now. Order. I'm sorry. I'm sure you can do it much more succinctly, much more quickly. You're now up, I believe, to about sentence number 6. Let's have the question.
Mr. Speaker, point of order. I would hope that it would apply to
you. Honorable member, the point of order is noted. It's not to be argued now. Please continue with the question.
My first question to the minister responsible is this. I wonder if the minister will agree that there is a matter of urgency insofar as women's shelters are concerned, insofar as women, families are being turned away by the thousands in Alberta.
Mr. Speaker, I would again remind the leader of the Liberal Party that this government does recognize that it is a matter of urgency. And it's because of that, Mr. Speaker, that we've put forward the commitment to women's shelters in this province that we have. And I once again remind the member that last year we increased our funding by 9%. The year before that it was 24%. The year before that it was 10%. The year before that it was 30%. In the last 5 years, Mr. Speaker, we have increased our funding and our commitment to women's shelters by almost 300%. But I hear what the member is telling me. We're concerned. I'm concerned about the acute situation that we're seeing in particular in the city of Edmonton. It's not right across the province, fortunately, Mr. Speaker, and yes, we're going to be looking for remedies to be able to address that.
Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted that the minister is agreeing that it is a matter of urgency, but I think the record is clear that the assistance isn't adequate. Now, given that the government has provided $10 million to upgrade motels, buy fence posts, and buy Chem Biomed shares, is the minister prepared to go and ask for a special warrant to look after the needs of Alberta women and their families?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's interesting the other references that the member is making, and I know that he perhaps knows a little more about motels than I do. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm here as the minister responsible for women's shelters, and I've already outlined very clearly our commitment. On top of that, again, Mr. Speaker, I remind the member that last year we were able to add 6 new satellite shelters across this province, 6 additional services that weren't there a year ago, Mr. Speaker. On top of that, we're just in the process of opening a new shelter in Peace River. On top of that, Mr. Speaker, we're the only province in Canada to establish an office for the prevention of family violence. On top of that, Mr. Speaker, 2 years ago we announced new funding for community-based initiatives, and currently are funding 36 educational projects across the province and another 14 demonstration projects. Mr. Speaker, clearly this government is concerned about family violence, and we're doing something about it. But again, Mr. Speaker, I remind the member opposite that we're not going to solve this problem alone, that we're turning to Albertans, we're turning to governments at all levels, and we're asking people to work together to solve this.
Not enough.
Mr. Speaker, I do know a little bit about motels, and to be throwing money to businessmen to upgrade motels is the most ridiculous thing that you can do. And when you compare it with the plight of women, it doesn't make sense. My question is this. I want to know what the minister is prepared to say to women who are being turned away from these centers while he's funding rugs being replaced in motels in Alberta. What do you say to those women?
Well, again, Mr. Speaker, the leader might want to refer his question as it relates to motels to the minister that's responsible, and he might want to supplement my answer since the leader has raised the question. But again, I can only talk about our commitment to women's shelters, and I don't understand why the leader of the Liberal Party can't recognize the priority that we've made this in our government. Clearly, substantive increases in funding that I've outlined already, Mr. Speaker. But I want to say that, yes, again, we recognize it, and so do Albertans. And I'd want to point out to the member opposite, as I've said all along, that it's going to require a partnership. Only last week, Mr. Speaker, a law firm, Field & Field, announced $75,000 to help battered women receive counseling and support. Mr. Speaker, for me, that's extremely encouraging. And I recognize, Mr. Speaker, that Albertans are prepared to help resolve these things, that they're prepared to be a partner in all of this. A clear example of what can happen in a community when the need is there. And I'm confident that together, Mr. Speaker...
Thank you. I'm confident in the rest of the answer to Cypress Radcliffe, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Federal and Intergovernmental Affairs, and it's related to the General Agreement of Trades and Tariffs that he attended last week. And I wonder, with the failing of the initial negotiations, if there's information that the member can share, that the Minister can share with this Assembly, because of the very important effect that has on all industry in Alberta, and especially agriculture industry.
Mr. Speaker, I indeed did attend in Brussels with representatives from all the other provinces except Prince Edward Island and the federal government. Extensive and intensive this week of discussions, which unfortunately resulted in a semi-collapse, if not total collapse. And I note from Hansard on December the 7th that the Honorable Associate Minister of Agriculture responded to similar questions asked by the member for Cypress Radcliffe. It is a matter of grave concern to this government and to all governments in Canada that the European community in particular saw fit to stonewall any efforts to really come to grips with this issue of enormous export subsidies in particular being paid to their producers. And this is going to have a very dire consequences, particularly for the grains, oilseeds, and red meat export producers in Western Canada. At the same time, there is a small glimmer of hope that the adjourned proceedings to Geneva in January will result in some additional concessions being made by Europe, but I'm not overly optimistic. I just want to say that we will work very closely with the federal government and every other province to try and exert a Canadian pressure through the Cairns groups and as a result of our relationships with other nations around the world to try and see success in January.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My supplementary question then to the Minister is what are we going to do now with the effect of export has on our grain industry and the amount of money that is there? What are we going to do? What are we going to do to be ready?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think one of the things we are going to have to do, there are a number of things which will have to be done, will be the subject of intense discussion by governments. But first of all, we're going to have to expand our markets in the United States for our red meats. And thank goodness we have the free trade agreement in place to provide a secure opportunity for our red meat producers to obtain access into the United States market. Now, the honourable member for Vegreville thinks it's a funny matter. It isn't funny at all. It's nothing at all funny about this, and I find it quite disconcerting that the honourable member for Vegreville constantly interrupts and when I'm trying to give a serious answer to the question.
Agricultural policies.
But the honourable member for Vegreville demonstrates his lack of concern for the farm sector in this province by his laughter and the laughter of his the member for Edmonton Centre in particular. I find very interesting. But we are going to have to further
Order. Edmonton Avonmore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My questions are to the Minister responsible for the Human Rights Commission. Mr. Speaker, as we mark the 42nd anniversary of the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights, our Human Rights Commission reports that caseloads have doubled in the last 3 years and are running almost 40% higher in the first 7 months of 1990. But the budget allocation for the Commission this year is lower than that for the year of 1986. And indeed, the Commission has had to cancel scheduled meetings for lack of funds and has had to approach the government for emergency funds. Will the Minister explain her government's lack of sufficient funding to the Commission, and will she now commit to ensuring adequate funding for the 1991-92 fiscal year to ensure that the basic human rights for Albertans are protected and assured?
Mr. Speaker, it is true that the caseload at the Commission has doubled in the last 2 years and is in fact increased by 40% this year over last. It is true that they are playing a very significant role in Alberta of today, particularly given the increasing diversity that we have in Alberta. And it is true that I welcome any advocacy to help persuade our Treasury Board to do just exactly what the member opposite is suggesting.
I hope the Treasurer heard that response, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Human Rights Commission is presently prevented by legislation from initiating investigations into human rights violations on its own, but indeed must wait for a complaint from an individual before it can act. This provision prevents many human rights abuses from being investigated and examined because complainants feel afraid to come forward. They report being intimidated and afraid. I would ask the Minister if she will be looking into amending the code so that under the Commission's powers it can initiate its own investigations.
Mr. Speaker, there are a couple of provisions in the Individual Rights Protection Act that do help in circumstances that the member has described. One of them is you do not have to be the person who is aggrieved to be the person who complains. So we can have third-party complaints. So, for example, the member opposite could, on behalf of someone who has felt aggrieved, lay a complaint and the Commission could act thereafter. We have also, as you probably recall, in the spring session, we increased the whistleblower protection provisions of the Individual Rights Protection Act so that people are protected from repercussions having come forward to uphold the principles of human rights in action. Those we have had in place now for a short time, but I think we are seeing already that it has had a positive effect on those who are interested in upholding these rights.
Calgary McKnight.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, currently student living allowances under the Student Finance Board are $615 a month for a single student living away from home. When inflation is taken into account, this is 161 or 20.8% less than the amount in 1983-84. Married students and single parents have similarly had their living allowances slashed by this government. My question is to the Minister of Advanced Education. Does the Minister actually believe that students today can live on less than they could in 1983?
Speaker, the honourable member is asking for an opinion, it seems to me. I would simply state that, as the member well knows, I have ordered a review of the tuition fee question, bearing in mind, as I've stated, the role of the Student Finance Board is to ensure any adult Albertan who wishes to attend a post-secondary institution shall not be prevented from doing so because of financial resources.
Thank you. Given the impact GST will have on student living costs, and on one of their largest expenditures, textbooks, will the minister immediately review the aid being provided? Waiting for the report won't help students this January.
Mr. Speaker, to my knowledge, all students who apply get a fair hearing. Those that don't get the type of funding that they require have the opportunity to appeal through an appeal committee to see that it's reviewed. To my knowledge, Mr. Speaker, that's not been a problem. I would simply come back and remind the honourable member that the role of the Student Finance Board is to help those who are in need of financial assistance, and that role will not change, Mr. Speaker.
Calgary Glenmore, followed by Vegreville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Much to our chagrin, the GST will be a reality in just a few short weeks, and yet there's still massive confusion with the public as to the province's responsibility to the services that the province provides, such as the motor vehicles branch and liquor stores, and more importantly, the land titles office. Could the provincial treasurer please clarify how the GST will affect these services?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the member, of course, underscores one of the major problems which the province has identified for some time, that is the administrative problems which will surround and emerge from the imposition of this wrong-headed tax, the GST, on January of '91. The legislation, although I'm not providing a legal opinion, Mr. Speaker, the legislation is undergoing some careful review right now by members of Treasury, and Treasury has under consideration with the Department of Revenue some extensive analysis about how the province will operate and what we'll do in certain cases. The legislation, the federal legislation, however, is fairly specific in some areas, providing direction to people who acquire services from governments, in that the legislation provides direction that certain services by the province are tax exempt. That is to say, there'll be no GST applied to those kinds of services. In particular, government supplies are spelt out as being information services, and I can say that in the information services, such things as providing certificates or documents evidencing the vital statistics, the residency, the citizenship, the registration of a person for services provided for the government, those sorts of permits are not going to be taxed, Mr. Speaker, nor will a supply of services providing information with respect to a certificate or other document evidencing the title to or right to estate, that is, a land titles information, will not be taxable. And property registration system is also specifically noted as being exempt. Now, where you get the problem, Mr. Speaker, is in the other area of services where, in the case of my colleague, the Minister of Forestry and Wildlife, issuing a license to harvest wood for your Christmas tree, that becomes a taxable supply on behalf of the province, and that is not reconciled with the fact that other natural resource sales by the province are non-taxable. So, Mr. Speaker, those are some of the areas. I can't be more comprehensive because, of course, it's now part of the discussions that are taking place between the federal government and the province, and more information will be provided to the departments as we go along.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the provincial treasurer outline whether or not this will in any way affect the court action that is underway?
Well, that's particularly right. Mr. Speaker, the legislation, because of its uncertainty, has provided a need for the province to pursue not just the broad issue of the GST and the wrong nature of that legislation, but as I pointed out when my colleague Attorney General and I provided our outline of the GST legal challenge in October of 1990, we outlined there at least one part of the concern which the member has raised, and that is where the GST attempts to tax provincial crown property, contravening Section 125 of the Constitution of Canada. And that argument is quite an important argument, not in the context only of these issues that have been raised by the member, but in other ways in which the federal government may use its own taxing power to intrude into Section 125 issues, which clearly are wrong and which clearly in the Constitution were intended to protect the assets of one government from taxation by another government. And so that constitutional issue, without arguing the merits pro or con of the legal position, will be in fact one of the major parts of the legal issue that will be before the Court of Appeal here in Alberta sometime in March.
Thank you. Vegreville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With grain prices being lower in real terms than any time since the 1930s and net farm incomes in Alberta dropping steadily, this government demonstrated its concern for the interests of farmers by raising the income requirements for the farm credit or for the farm fuel distribution allowance program by 400% in August, Mr. Speaker, done in true conservative fashion with no consultation, no consideration for the impact on the people that were cut off. 10,000 farm families, Mr. Speaker, I might add, many of them young farmers trying to get established in the industry. Now, in response to public meetings held by the official opposition and petitions circulated in backbenchers' ridings, they admitted, at least partially, that they made a mistake and relaxed the guidelines somewhat, leaving farmers faced with a confusing array of appeals and reconsiderations. And I'd like to ask the minister, I'd like to challenge the minister to roll back these unfair changes that he made and agree right here and now not to make any changes now or in the future without full consultation with farm groups in the province of Alberta.
Treasurer,
Treasurer was a great guy.
Well, you're in charge of the program.
That's right.
Mr. Speaker, no, there was a vague reference, Mr. Speaker. I would, a member from Vegreville, in his usual sloppy fashion, failed to mention which minister it is he wanted to address the question to. This is a program that cuts across several departments, Mr. Speaker. Let me say that the farm fuel distribution allowance is one of the very significant parts of our comprehensive policy providing major assistance to the farming community, the agricultural sector in this province, wherein the province has stepped in to provide very comprehensive support systems on the cost of operation, from the Farm Credit Stabilization Program, which has been debated here already at 9% money for a 20-year duration, protecting the cost of financing from, say, 6 to 7% for the average farm family. A more recent announcement by the Minister of Agriculture, wherein farm fertilizer protection assistance has been extended to July 31st, 1991, massive assistance to provide the cost of inputs, protection to the farmer. And thirdly, as the member pointed out, a very comprehensive program which provides and is intended to assist the farmer to provide protection for the cost of fuel, both gas and diesel, for on-farm operations, Mr. Speaker, on-farm operations. This program, Mr. Speaker, given recommendations to us from a variety of number of farm groups and members of the agricultural community, suggested to us that there were abuses taking place within the system, and if you wanted to redirect the money to ensure that the program would not have to be comprehensively reduced, that you could take some money from those low-income farmers, those farmers who are not really in the farming business, and ensure that the high-income farmers, that is those people who are real farmers, had a protection. Mr. Speaker, what we did is simply say, if your farm income is less than $10,000, the program does not apply. And it's interesting, Mr. Speaker, it's interesting that most people who are in that low farm income category are the people who are the ones who are abusing the farm purple fuel protection plan, Mr. Speaker. So what it does, don't forget, Mr. Speaker, is provide up to about 80 cents a gallon on subsidies for diesel fuel and something close to that for other fuel for on-farm purposes. That's the intention. It wasn't intended to drive to and from or to be abused by others. The intention was to ensure that farmers got the benefit. This is an important peg of our comprehensive.
Thank you. Thank you. Vegreville.
Mr. Speaker, it's no wonder we're $10 billion in debt if he doesn't even know which programs his department funds, but I'd like to remind the provincial treasurer that this program, the important farm program, has been the favorite political football of the Getty government. Up, down, take it away, give it back. And I'd like to ask the provincial treasurer, to whom I will send the 2,300 names on this petition, I'd like to ask him what assurances he can give these 2,300 Albertans, their families and the communities they support, that they'll stop playing games with this important farm program and engage in consultation before making any changes to it.
Speaker, we had a wide consultation on this issue, and this was recommended to us by a large number of farming community members, Mr. Speaker, who realized that if the abuse continued, Mr. Speaker, if the abuse continued, that other parts of the program would have to be modified. We thought this was the better option to ensure that the benefits flowed through to the real farmer for on-farm costs, and any abuses were eliminated, Mr. Speaker. That's the normal process when a program is evaluated. Rather than cancel or modify the program in a dramatic sense, we refocused the dollars so that the best benefit went to those farmers who most legitimately deserved it, Mr. Speaker. That's the way policy is carried on, unlike the shotgun approach from those people over there who haven't even got on the playing field yet.
Edmonton Belmont, followed by Edmonton Goldbar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My questions are for the Minister of Labour. Mr. Speaker, the recent unemployment insurance changes allow a woman to take up to 30 weeks of maternity leave. This progressive changes recognizes the economic reality of today that people need a two-income household in order to maintain their standard of living. But unfortunately, the Employment Standards Code requires employers to permit only 18 weeks of maternity leave. So, Mr. Speaker, according to a spokesman for the Department of Labour, there are no plans to bring the Alberta Code up to the level of the new Unemployment Insurance Commission regulations. So my question to the Minister is simply this: why?
Mr. Speaker, a colleague of mine on the front bench here has asked me to congratulate the member opposite on the tie he is wearing today, and I'm more than happy to convey those sentiments to him.
When does he win the bet? How long do you have to wear it before he wins the bet?
Secondly, regarding the Employment Standards Code, we have that under review. There is nothing in Alberta law that would prevent anybody from making arrangements with their own employer to take full advantage of the unemployment insurance that the federal government is offering. The Employment Standards Code is a minimum, and as you say, it's 18 weeks. In fact, for example, our own employees in the government of Alberta, we have 24 weeks in our collective agreement. That is 6 months, and I think the UIC provisions actually allow for 7.5 months for both parents to take, one or other to take leave for that period of time. And there are a number of different arrangements throughout Alberta, and we're reviewing all of those and to see, in fact, how many people will be impacted adversely, if you like, by the new provisions. But in the meantime, as I say, I want to stress this: there is no law in Alberta that prevents anyone in Alberta taking full advantage of the federal program.
Well, just while we're on the point of reviewing the code, I'm wondering if the Minister will commit to the Assembly to review or provide provision for paternal leave. Of course, the Unemployment Insurance Commission has allowed for paternal leave, yes, of up to 10 weeks, and I would hope that the Employment Standards Code would reflect that change as well.
Retroactively.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, again, many collective agreements, again, for example, the Government of Alberta collective agreement with our union does, in fact, allow for both maternal and paternal leave. And we have that provision also with regard to adoption in the Employment Standards Code, but there is that one gap in the code, which is to say we have made it a minimum for maternal leave. On the other hand, again, I want to stress the Employment Standards Code is minimum standards, and any employer in Alberta can make arrangements with an employee above and beyond that, but not below the standard that is set.
Edmonton Goldbar.
Mr. Speaker, it's a sad fact that not only the winter months, but the holiday season creates a very difficult time to deal with for many Albertans. The tragic spate of suicides in our province continues to grow. Over the weekend, we heard of 3 more deaths in Calgary. 2 that we know of had been turned away from Calgary hospitals because of lack of space, so that people cannot get the help and prevention that's customarily available to them. Mr. Speaker, we're in a critical situation in terms of mental health, and it's time for the Minister to personally intervene with action, not just promises of review. Mr. Speaker, my question to the Minister is, what is the Minister prepared to do to get more trained workers available in both public and private services immediately? Not next spring, but now.
Mr. Speaker, as I've said before in this House, I will repeat, every suicide is a tragedy, and I believe every member of this House regrets it very much. But in fact, what we are doing about the question that the member asks about training of professionals, readying our emergency units and others for picking up on whatever signs may present themselves. we are working very directly with our provincial suicidologists and as part of our program. I'm happy to inform the member that to date over 9,000 professionals in this province have been specifically trained through this program. And so I think we can all see that the efforts of the program under the suicidologist are far more pervasive than just the single community agencies which they impact upon.
Well, Mr. Speaker, thank you. I do know the numbers, but that doesn't guarantee anything, unfortunately. My other question to the minister is, can the minister explain just why the Suicide Prevention Office, the very office that's responsible for training caregivers, has had their funding frozen since 1986? That's according to the department's evaluation of suicide prevention programs that was released last month.
Mr. Speaker, in fact, the total budget for mental health this year has risen by 6%. And how we spend the monies within mental health is a consultative process, which I certainly work on with not only Department of Health people, but certainly in planning towards 1991-92 budget with the newly established Provincial Advisory Committee on Mental Health Issues, which is certainly going to be an important consultative group for us. I acknowledge that there could be a far better match between community and institutional support, particularly in the area of mental health, although I would say it's probably an issue which pervades all of health. However, I think it's interesting to note that the suicide rate in Alberta in 1989, which for a long time has been of concern to many of us, was at its lowest since 1973.
Lester Slave Lake, followed by Edmonton Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Health. Many of my constituents are still living in poverty and require vital, essential services. Although our government is making major progress in many areas like social reform, we still have immediate problems. One of these problems is the state of health care facilities in northern Alberta and the need for building hospitals in rural Alberta, despite what the opposition members say. There has been strong representation made by my constituents for the last 2 years regarding the Slave Lake Hospital. Would the minister tell me whether or not the Slave Lake Hospital is part of the budgeting process that we are in now?
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the question by the Honourable Member for Slave Lake and certainly want to assure her constituents that the government is fully committed to the reconstruction of the hospital and the construction of 30 new long-term beds on the site. But I also want to assure members of this House that in spite of some of the damages that occurred as a result of the flooding of the Sawridge Creek in 1988, that the hospital continues to provide safe services to Albertans living in the Slave Lake region. The hospital as a project is certainly part of the budgeting, the review that is underway right now, because as members will know, in order to maintain the $135 million in capital, which is ongoing in 1990-91, the government made the decision to slow down and in fact freeze some of the projects which were in the committed stage. A review of how those projects should be scheduled out into the longer term is what is underway. But I certainly want to assure the residents of Slave Lake that their hospital is clearly a commitment and one which this government stands by and will see built.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Minister. What time frame are we looking at for a decision to be made on this particular hospital and particularly other facilities?
Well, Mr. Speaker, there are about 40 projects right now which are in a freeze situation, and the Honourable Member for Edmonton Centre may snicker at that, but even though that is occurring, we are building at the level of $135 million in the province. And certainly when I was speaking to hospital trustees, we were talking about how health too must be part of managing better fiscally in this province in order to meet the deficit situation in which we are in, was a very conscious decision made by this government to ensure that we would if we were to find resources in health, it would be on the capital side as opposed to the operating side. I stand by that recommendation to my cabinet colleagues, Mr. Speaker, because I truly believe that we need to do everything we can to maintain a level of programming, and the capital funding will come, but it will not come on a systematic basis. For that reason, we have kept the level at $135 million this year, which duplicates what we were spending in hospital capital last year, and I think it's an appropriate way to move as we move through those projects. We've also seen a good number of recommendations with respect to the Rainbow Report, which has looked at our need for capital, our need for new dollars into the health system, and certainly new dollars in the health system is something that even the Rainbow Commission and members of both opposition parties coincidentally are saying is adequate, but perhaps we could get better value out of those dollars than the way we're getting them, and that balance between community and institution is one that I think we're all working towards, and I look forward to further discussion in this House.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the further discussions of what this government's conscious of was promising hospitals before the last election and after the election, then putting them all on freeze. That's what I was snickering about, Mr. Speaker. I think it's important to get back to the very important issue about suicides in this province, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to focus some concerns about suicides and the need to prevent suicides in northern Alberta. Mr. Speaker, in fact, of the younger people in the province, over 33 committed suicide last year, 33 people under the age of 20, 3 of them in the Grande Prairie area just in the last 2 months. Mr. Speaker, and in Grande Prairie alone, the mental health services put young people on a 3- and 4-month waiting list for services despite suicidal tendencies, and now, sadly, the 3 have died in the last 2 months. When will the Minister of Health undertake, with her capital freeze, and get those dollars and get on to providing a continuity of care for people with mental health services, particularly the young people in this province?
Mr. Speaker, we do have a new initiative underway this budget year in children's mental health, which saw an addition of $2 million put into children's mental health services. That has meant the 27 new positions in the various mental health clinics around the province. And I believe that when we look at services for children, we can't focus just on a single indicator, but rather must look at the whole child, if you like, and the need for mental health services. That's certainly the way that we're proceeding in this province, and I'm pleased with both the operating commitment of the $2 million as well as the overall commitment on capital, which we are giving to the province as a response to that initiative.
Well, Mr. Speaker, is the minister not aware that of that initiative, no new positions are in the mental health services in Grande Prairie? 3 were allocated, none have been come through yet, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to ask the minister that in the community of Wembley, where the 2 boys did commit suicide in the last couple of weeks, the schools in the community pulled together remarkably to meet the many grief needs of members in that community, but they're asking desperately now that they are able to pull together to help to prevent suicides, not to be there in the aftermath after them. Again, I'd like to ask the minister, what new initiative is she going to ensure that provides for a continuity of care for small communities like Wembley after the Northern Alberta Development Council has done their work to ensure that these tragedies can be prevented, not just be there after they've occurred?
Well, Mr. Speaker, some very important work has been done by the Northern Alberta Development Council, and I'm very grateful to them for doing it. And I'm sure that we can all find examples as the one cited by the Honourable Member. But I think it's important to look at overall our delivery of mental health services, to look at the fact that we have 53 community clinics, 45 traveling clinics, 54 funded agencies that are working throughout this province. That doesn't mean they're going to be everywhere at every time, but certainly when there's a tragic event that occurs within a community, the work that's done by the team in the Department of Health to go up and work with that community, to work with the kids in the schools, to work with families, is before and after the tragic event occurs, is something that I think we can be very proud of the work being done by the Department of Health in this province.
Might we revert briefly to the introduction of special guests? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Legislative